So I should be completely working right now. In fact, I am in probably the busiest time of the year. I'm getting ready for two shows, one Sunday, one Monday in Nashville, live recordings that'll be televised across the nation, doing playback. I'm super busy. I'm recording content, but in the midst of doing all that, I logged onto YouTube, and in the midst of a feed full of NASCAR videos and Disney vlogger videos, it recommended this video by Rick Beato, is performing with a backing track cheating. I have not watched this yet. I thought we could watch this together in real time, and I will react and share my opinion. And let's see, here we go. So like I said, I have not watched this yet. I have a lot of opinions about, you know, performing with backing tracks. Is it good? Is it bad? And I have a lot of opinions on what I would consider rediscovering the lost art of playback tech and being a playback tech, just because I've been doing so much of it preparing for these two shows coming up. And I've been thinking a lot about what it means to do it really, really well. So I've not watched this video. Let's watch it together. Let's see what happens, and again, I'll respond and react in real time.
Some people asked me to weigh in on this controversy between Eddie Trunk and Ronnie Radke from the band Falling in Reverse and Sebastian Bach. It's all about playing with backing tracks.
So I don't know what controversy is.
And I have a lot of thoughts on this. Just for those of you that don't know anything about what I'm talking about. So Ronnie Radke's in his band Falling in Reverse, and he's had a tweet saying that, "I'm sorry, I never make videos like this, but I feel like I owe it to you guys. We show up to rehearsals and our laptops are missing, and we run all of our show stuff on it. And as a band in 2022, you need your laptop. It's like a car driving without an engine." So they couldn't play this particular gig because of not having their laptops. So Eddie Trunk responded, this is back in April, he responded, "I've long railed against the epidemic of bands using tracks live and how fans and promoters just accept live acts and paying to see a live band, and it's anything but. This is how bad it's become. Everyone okay with this? Unreal." And then Sebastian Bach and Ronnie Radke got into it with each other. Ronnie Radke accused Sebastian Bach of using tracks. He says, "Wow, dummy, are you saying that you believe I use tracks on stage?" And then he says, "Watch what happens when track bands call real musicians idiots." If any of you remember the SNL in 2004.
Which is funny, if you haven't seen my episode of Behind the Spacebar where I say real bands, real musicians don't use tracks, go listen to that episode. I'll link it in the description of this video. It's ironic that he said that, but okay, let's keep going.
With Ashlee Simpson. She was on SNL. She was doing two songs. Jude Law was the host of it. This is the most embarrassing moment ever. Essentially ruined her career as a
probably other than
singer.
Milli Vanilli.
So the band was playing their second song. The drummer started the sequence, and then this happened. So they've started the song. They don't even realize it yet. I think they're starting to realize it. And her vocal comes in.
Yeah.
And it's obvious that she was going to lip sync. And the band doesn't even know what to do. She's doing this weird jig, and then she eventually just walks off stage. She tried to explain it. She blamed it on the drummer, blah, blah, blah. That was the end of her career. So bands...
Which, side note, what's really fascinating, I did a deep dive into that experience, and I talked to someone who knew someone who, I guess I shouldn't say exactly who they are, but there was someone who was very close to that situation that told me, you know, one, that was a failure on management by putting that on the drummer, but two, I think all of us watching that probably thought, oh, the drummer was fired. But based on what this person told me was that drummer continued to tour with Ashlee for like a year. So he was like, I'll take, you know, the blame, whatever, I'll keep playing, whatever. But he kept playing with her for a year, which is interesting. I'm interested to see what Rick says here, because I would not consider that the same thing as playing with backing tracks. That's playing with backing tracks and lip syncing, which is different to me than backing tracks. And that comment earlier, I'm going to end up preaching the whole time, but that comment earlier where I think it was Sebastian Bach was responding and saying, oh, track bands, you know, calling out real musicians. A lot of people assume if you are using tracks, you are faking on stage, which is not the case. You're maybe adding some additional elements. Again, I'm not saying Rick is saying this. I haven't heard what Rick said here. So I should shut up and listen to him, because I'm responding to him, not just responding to him responding to people. But let's see what he says here.
Backing tracks for decades. If you go back and watch videos of The Who playing Bob O'Reilly in the 70s, you can see in this picture Keith Moon's wearing headphones because he's actually playing with the keyboard part that's on a 24 track or whatever they used to play it back. And
yeah, backing tracks is not a new thing
on stage.
You know.
Pete Townshend's playing guitar, but that part's going through it. And during that song, he had headphones taped on his head, and he's listening to the click track and hearing the sequence play. And that's how they were able to play Bob O'Reilly.
I'm glad he brought that up. Yeah,
I remember in the early 90s that I knew bands. I've played gigs with workstations like the Insonic SQ1, where you'd have a sequence program that might have pads or something, or sound effects with percussion, and your drummer would take the right out, meaning the right side output. It'd have a count off, and they'd play to a click, and the sequence would start wherever it started, and he'd be locked to a click. And then those parts would just come in. It would make your band.
The standard is clicking cues on the left, right?
A lot of bands
tracks on the right.
People didn't really know about it, and typically the drummer would start the sequence from the keyboard in the background. In the early 2000s, people would play with mini discs, so they were stable. I don't know if you remember mini disc players.
Yeah.
I was working at the studio here in Atlanta, and the singer for Train came in to redo their set. They played with these backing tracks for Drops of Jupiter. You know, they couldn't carry around a string orchestra with them, so they...
It's a good reason to use tracks.
Because without that, that's pretty much the whole song, so you needed that.
Yeah.
Okay, so he came in, and they dumped the stuff from...
Otherwise, you're going to hire a full orchestra and travel, which is financially not possible.
He would, of course, sing the lead vocals, and things like that, and the other guys would sing the background vocals. These were just things to augment the songs.
Yes, which is different than
when I started
Ashlee
producing,
Simpson.
bands wanted backing tracks. And it became really common for us to provide them. This was a service that producers did. And my assistant,
which
Ken,
they still do.
GL, that you've seen on my channel before, he would make up their backing tracks. So the backing tracks would consist of a click track and then any auxiliary parts they could do. Many times it would be background vocals as well, because typically we'd work with bands that would only have one person that could sing. So my thing was that, okay, if you guys are going to use these, let's blend the things back in so that people don't notice them. It shouldn't be parts that are obvious. If there's a keyboard part in a song that's not an obvious moving part, fine, put it in. If it's a pad, put it in. I try to encourage the bands to play as much live stuff as possible.
Which is great. I would agree with that.
And even if you had background vocals in there, sing along with it.
Yeah.
So it seems real.
Because a lot of times the background vocal thing is highly affected.
Most of the time, to be honest with you, you wouldn't even notice they were playing with it.
Yeah, if you do it well, I think that's true.
From Pro Tools or whatever they would use back in the time, they would
Ableton.
trigger the sequence, or they would play with some type of recorder. People used to play with iPods, and they would split the signal, the stereo signal, and they'd take a mono send out with these things, and they would come through the speakers. Most live shows are mono. And the reason they're mono is because you don't want people that come to hear Jeff Beck, and Jeff Beck he's on the left side of the stage, and he's only coming through the left speaker. What about the people sitting on the right side? So most sound systems are mono, so that people can hear everything that they've paid to hear.
I'm so glad Rick said that, because I've seen a lot of people get frustrated when I've got a couple of videos on the channel where I'm like, here's the easiest way to get click and tracks out. And they're like, yeah, but it's just a mono signal. That's awful. What he just said, the system that you're listening, the most of the systems you're listening to concerts on are mono systems. That doesn't mean one speaker. It just means you can't pan left and right. It just means you have this to create a mix as opposed to this. And a good engineer is going to make a great sounding mix. So yeah, good point.
So
right?
that was.
I'm assuming he's going to say now when people ask, this is what they're asking. But
it go out the sound to the soundboard, and the sound guy can actually mix in at different levels all the different stems.
Yeah, that's
they
good.
didn't have stems back then.
Multiple outputs.
And in 2004, Ashlee Simpson, this was a major disaster, and it really made all of us rethink how we did backing tracks. In that everybody wanted the name of the song to go with the count off. So it would say "Pieces of Me," 2, 3, 4, click, 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 click. And then
that's smart. I'm glad he brought that up.
So there would be no doubt that the drummer and everyone that's hearing the headphones would hear the name of the song before the count off started, so you weren't starting on the wrong song, so you wouldn't have a disaster.
And what's important to mention about this, he may clean that up, is if you have that in the beginning, one, they should not have been on live television on SNL and having the drummer run tracks. They should have a playback tech do that, which is what everyone that goes on SNL, any live performance show, does now. That was a poor decision on management's part. That was not the drummer's fault. But what he's mentioned here is if you put that song title in the beginning and the count off, then the benefit is when you start, you'll hear Pieces of Me and you'll go, oh, and stop it before anyone hears the stems come out. And there may be an awkward look back, but that's way better than having the lead vocal come through for the wrong song, which is great. So I'm glad Rick mentioned that. That's really good.
Like this. So we would always slate the song title and then the click would start. And here's the interesting
Which I would
thing.
never
When
ask the
go see
producer
bands
to do
play
that. I would
live
do that
we
as a
made backing
playback
tracks
type.
for. The songs that we didn't make backing tracks for always sounded weaker. They just did. You know, I love live
Which is the
playing.
reality.
I want the bands to be able to play live, but, you know, to be objective about it, all the sound effects that swelled into the chorus, all the auxiliary parts in the chorus,
the extra stuff you can't replicate live.
That you could never create live. The guys we play
yes.
in the main parts on their things. Or, you know, if there were background vocals that they couldn't do, or vocal effects or something like that. But typically, you know, we would never have the lead vocal in there. And we would mix their whole set. So the whole set would be in order.
That's interesting that Rick is the producer.
You go from one song to the next, and the drummer would be responsible, or the sound guy, for starting and stopping the sequences and moving to the next one. Nowadays, it's really
Here we go. Let's see. What was he going to say?
Most of the bands that have come in here that I've interviewed that are my friends play with backing tracks. Okay, a big part of their show is related to it, because they're not just running their tracks off of it. They're running their pedal switches because they're playing with Neural DSP Quad Cortex, or they play with Axe Effects.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's the connected stage experience. It's not just tracks.
They start the beginning of their set, and the whole set's programmed so that every song, the drummer's playing to a click. Everybody's hearing the click of their in-ears. They're hearing a mix of what they're doing, and they're hearing all the backing tracks, right? And the pedal changes are happening, meaning a MIDI cable is plugged into their multi-effects unit that's creating their guitar sounds, because they're not using any real amplifiers. So
yeah, this is the whole
all
connected
of their pedal
stage
changes,
thing, which is like more
on every song. When it goes to a lead, their guitar, if they're standing out the front of the stage, all of a sudden the lead sound is just there, and they'd play it. And then as soon as the lead's over, they'd slide off, the echo would trail off or whatever, and then their rhythm sound would be there. And these are the exact sounds that they used on the records. But they're
actually playing
for every song. So there's no variation from show to show typically, unless they reorder the set. So for a lot of these bands, everything is run off the laptop. It's not just the guitar changes, the extra parts. It's also the light show is coming right off the same information. Each track contains all the pedal switching for both guitar
Which this is amazing for smaller bands
whatever,
that can't travel with an LD. You can have a super high quality lighting show, super high quality show without a person programming doing lights live, which is great.
That's why they need the laptops. That's why they're so important for the show.
Yeah, that's
From
good,
prog metal to metal bands to pop acts, things like that.
Everybody,
they
CCM,
all do it.
Everything.
A lot of the old bands don't do it because they don't want to get into the technology of it. The Rolling Stones don't do it. Jeff Beck isn't playing with backing tracks, but most contemporary bands play with backing tracks. It's a fact.
I do know a few legacy bands that do use tracks that you would probably never know they use tracks, and a lot of them use vocals as well too, but they cover it really, really well. But I don't want to mention names.
Does it bother me? No, because I don't know why. I've just I think that if you can get away with having spontaneity, meaning you're not locked to the same tempo every night, you can play songs with different arrangements. To me, that was the thing about going to see a band live.
Which,
That's
if you use Ableton Live, you can.
Huge live followings, whether it's Fish or Dead
Dave
Company
Matthews
or Grateful
Band.
Dead or whoever. Bands that can really play live and can vary the songs from night to night tend to have really big live followings because they get a different show each night. When I saw Pearl Jam, they're not playing with backing tracks. They have 100 songs on their set list that they have to choose from. And they sound amazing because they're used to playing like that. It's not until you found people that started in the late 90s, early 2000s that it was even a thing. Because you really didn't even have access to your backing tracks because people didn't have Pro Tools sessions.
That's true.
Afterwards, nowadays, bands have Pro Tools sessions of the mixes, and they can make their own backing tracks, and they can vary them. They say, we don't need this part, we don't need that part. So the producers don't even end up making their backing tracks, and now they are stemmed out, meaning that they might have 8 different tracks coming out of a Pro Tools rig or an Ableton rig, 8 different stereo stems that go out to the mixing console, and the mixer will mix them in as if they're players.
Yeah, that's good.
So
treat it as a part of the band. That's really good.
And the arguing about this, should Ronnie Radke have come out and said, no, we can't play because of our laptops? I don't know, in retrospect, maybe that wasn't a good move. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. That's the reality of the thing. When I read his tweet, I didn't even think anything of it. I didn't even register. And then I saw Eddie Trunk comment on it, and then the Sebastian Bach, the back and forth between Ronnie Radke and Sebastian Bach was crazy. But and Ronnie was saying, Aerosmith plays Dream On with backing tracks. How does Steven Tyler's piano go on when he gets away from the piano and you still hear it? Or how does this happen? How does that happen? People have been playing backing tracks for
forever,
decades.
Yeah.
Decades. Most people
so
don't
glad
notice it.
So glad he brought that up.
I don't notice it most of the time. That's what I have to say on it. Do I like it? Doesn't matter to me at all, as long as they do it well.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyways, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, man, I love what Rick said there, and I think he's right. Like, if you're gonna do it, at least do it really, really well. I appreciate his perspective on that. I think everything he said was really wise. There's a difference between, and again, I should have just let him finish. There's a difference between what Ashlee Simpson did and what most people do. Using backing tracks isn't cheating. Putting a vocal in a backing track, yes, is cheating if it's lead vocal and you're faking. But it also depends on the type of act, if that's appropriate or not. Not everyone should use clicking tracks. I just did an episode of Behind the Space Bar on that. I'll link that as well too. But yeah, I really appreciate Rick's opinion on that. And this is something, again, like I said, I've been thinking a lot about over the past couple weeks, just because I've been really heavily involved in these two shows that have, one is lots of different artists. We've got a lot of tracks in it. The other one is a Christmas special with big band, with orchestra, a lot of tracks, a lot of click, that we've got to sync everyone together and be together. So it's just more than just tracks. But I've just been thinking a lot about the art of playback and what that means and what it means to do really well. And we'll dive more into that. I think that's going to be a big theme of 2023 for me, just the art of playback. I think particularly a lot of, this channel is for everyone. It's not just for folks that do like church music, but I think there's a lot of church musicians and worship leaders that miss that because they have switched to apps that simplify the process, that remove your ability to do some things that really help and benefit your band. And I think a lot of people should still use those apps, and they're great choices for a lot of people. But there is an art to doing playback and using tracks really, really well. And there's an art to being a good MD and treating your band well. And so, yeah, I really appreciate what Rick said. I mean, he's always got a great opinion on stuff, I think, at least of the videos I've seen of his. So not that he needs me to tell you to subscribe to his channel, but subscribe to his channel if you haven't yet. Would love if you subscribe to my channel. Again, this is, I think, my third Reacts video, which these are fun. I mean, I enjoy them. I don't know if you enjoy them, but I post a brand new tutorial every single day, a brand new video. Again, not all of them are Reacts videos, but this was fun. I enjoyed it. I've got to get back to work, but I post a brand new video every single day. So hit the subscribe button, enable the bell icon. You'll see when that goes live, and you'll learn how to use backing tracks like a pro and rediscover the lost art of playback. Take care, everybody. Have a great week, great weekend. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.